Welcome to our campfire chat of Sleepaway Camp 101. Really glad to have all of you here with us tonight. I'm Tracy Levine, the director of One Happy Camper New Jersey at Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West. And this is our annual campfire chat where we will be talking about lots of tips on how to assess if your child is ready for camp, how to choose the right camp for your child, and tips on getting your child ready to be successful at camp. Over the past 12 years, I've guided hundreds, maybe thousands of families, and I look forward to sharing insights with you. I'm joined tonight by my colleague, Jerry Russo, who'll be joining us a little bit later, Renee Flax of American Camp Association, Lisa David, the director of Camp Harlem, and Carrie Youngs, the director of Camp Najwa. A couple of logistics. You see, it's a webinar, so you're seeing us, but we're not seeing you, but we definitely want this to be an interactive program. And so we want you to put questions in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will aim to answer those during the call as we go through the night. So feel free to share some messages there. We're going to start off with Renee and Lisa addressing camp readiness. I will then discuss choosing a camp, and Carrie will discuss tips for parents to prepare for camp, and Lisa will share some thoughts on that as well. We'll then have Jerry share info about financial incentives and have time for Q&A. So I'm going to turn it over to Renee to get us started and talk with us a bit about how to assess if your child is ready for camp. Renee.
Thank you, Tracy, and good evening, everybody. I'm so glad that you are here to do this. It's very exciting to think about camp in the middle of winter, and you are embarking on a great thing to do for your children and for your family. So to begin with, like how to start this process and how to assess like whether or not your child is actually ready for camp. So look at your child with an objective eye. How do other people describe them to you? How well do they interact with other people and adults? It's not so much how they behave at home. It's more of what teachers are telling you. Keep an eye on what they look like when they're in groups. Get a sense of who your child is. Generally, someone can go to camp at the age of 8, and typically, unless they are a younger sibling, most kids do start a little bit later than that as well. On average, it's children who are entering the 3rd or 4th grade who are starting their overnight experience. Often girls are ready before boys are, but that is very individual and will depend on the maturity of your child. Typically, a child will let you know when they are ready by exhibiting certain signs. And there are several key criteria a parent can consider when making the decision, and they can be used as a guideline. And some of these would include, does your child have overnights at other people's homes? One of the first keys that a child is ready to go away and not be with you is that they can sleep at a friend's, a grandparent's, or a neighbor's house and not feel anxious about the experience. They may get homesick, and on occasion they may feel panicked and need to come home in the middle of the night. But if that's what typically happens, then they may not be ready for an extended period away from home. Is your youngster mature enough and self-assured enough to take care of certain aspects for themselves? And this is something you really need to think about. Of course, there will be supportive counselors and other people in the bunk to assist them in the process, but your child will need to do things independently. For instance, a camper makes their own bed. They shower and brush their hair and teeth, put their clothes away, they dress themselves. These are also things you can begin to practice with so that once they do it, they become familiar with it. Does your child express themselves clearly when they need assistance, which is a really important factor in this as well? Will they be able to ask for assistance if they do need it? Being able to self-advocate is one of the most important skills a child will need when participating in an overnight camp. Now, in this age of COVID that we have all gone through for these past 3 years, and we have been living with a lot, children have experienced this in a very unique way. And this is a time in their lives that they often would have been doing more sleepovers with friends or having more after school activities. For many of these children, they have been home more than they would have during this whole process. This may make it more difficult for you to assess how your child will do at camp. This is a great topic to discuss with a camp director. Keep in mind that anything you ask a camp director, I can promise you they have been asked before, they have dealt with it before, and they will be your best guide as to whether or not your child is ready to attend their camp. But you need to be honest with them. They can only give you honest responses if you tell them the truth. Don't try to cover up. Don't try to pretend your child is a perfect child. They know that they're not. And so the more you can help them, the better that camp placement will work out for you. Trust your own judgment. Remember that no one knows your child better than you do. If your gut tells you that they're ready, then you will have a positive attitude when you're talking to your child about camp. They're going to pick up on your sense as to whether or not you feel they're ready. If you're hesitant and you're doubting their readiness, they are going to sense that as well. So try not to make them more nervous and internalize for themselves some of that fear. Your child's stamina at camp is also a very important piece to consider. It's a long day at camp and can be a tiring day for some kids. Gauge how they are doing after a long day of full activities. Many of you may have your children at day camp now. Are they coming home absolutely exhausted, or are they getting off that bus and still rearing to go? It will be a good guide for you as to what type of camp you should be looking for. And this doesn't mean they aren't ready for camp. It's just something for you to keep in mind when selecting a camp and seeing if there is going to be some downtime for them, and a time to relax and re-energize if that's something they're going to need. Has your child actually asked to go to overnight camp? Often a child hears about it from friends or older siblings or cousins, and they're telling them about what wonderful experiences camp are, and now they want to go as well. The same is true with older siblings or cousins talking to them about it. It's amazing how crucial this piece actually becomes. If a child is buying into this process, the odds of this being more successful are tremendous. If you present the concept of overnight to camp to your generally very outgoing, enthusiastic child, and he or she becomes completely overwhelmed, you may want to wait to discuss this. And maybe you could bring it up in another couple of weeks, or you may think about putting this off for 1 year. It's better to wait 1 more year than to send a child too early. If you don't believe they can be successful, then err on the side of caution and wait another year. It's absolutely fine. There is no formula that this is working off of. It's only what's right for you and your family. As your child matures, many of the issues you're seeing now will resolve themselves just based on time. So thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, Renee, for sharing your wisdom. And yeah, that's amazing. We're going to hear some additional thoughts from Lisa, but I'll say from the families that we work with, we're definitely seeing kids starting at all different ages. And as you said, especially with the times we've been going through the past couple of years, there's just no one right time for all kids. It is such a personal decision. So Lisa, would love to hear some thoughts from you as well. I'm going to share your slide.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Tracy, and thank you so much for inviting all of us to join. It's always nice to do this kind of work with our colleagues. And I think what you'll see is a lot of overlap and similarities in the things that we're sharing, which hopefully means it's tried and true wisdom that will be helpful to you as you make these decisions. I can also just add a note of gratitude to any parent who's thinking about camp for their children, because we believe maybe now more than ever in the value and impact of camp. And so it's a wonderful gift that you're considering giving to your kids. So a lot of what I'm going to share is similar to what Renee shared, and I'll just go briefly through those to see if there's some additional pieces to add. Some of the things that we have found to be signs of readiness, and please don't expect this to be a list that you're going to check every item off. These are just some ideas of things that you should consider as you try to assess when is the right time for camp. The first is that you believe your child is ready. As Renee talked about, you're the expert in your child. You know them, you notice things, you hear what they're saying, you hear what they might be hesitant about. And so when you have confidence that they are ready, that's usually a good sign. The next is that they want to go. As Renee said, that confidence in themselves, that excitement and interest that they are able to articulate and express to you, that's also a wonderful sign. And that's a good sign that they're going to be successful because they have a sense of excitement and a sense of pride and confidence. Another thing that we found helpful is about going to sleep and staying asleep easily without you. And that's not to say that they're alone, because certainly they're not in a cabin with many other kids and staff, but more about that separation from you as a parent, that they're able to self-soothe, that they have some kind of ritual to really calm themselves down at night, and that they're able to sleep through the night without disruption. And we know that there are other things that might play into those habits. So you should certainly talk to your director if you have concerns about their ability to go to sleep and stay asleep. Another thing, again, similar to what Renee shared, was about managing hygiene, because especially for some of our youngest campers who are doing those daily tasks on their own for the first time, you want to make sure that they're ready for that. And again, it's not to say that they are entirely on their own, because typically it's going to be prompted by their counselors, may even be supervised by them to make sure that they're washing their hair on a daily basis and brushing their teeth. But they have to have a sense of independence in thinking about things like, how do I open the soap dispenser and actually use it when I'm ready to take a shower? So, preparing for that and practicing for that is really helpful. You want to make sure that your child is somewhat self-sufficient at mealtime, because this might be the first time that kids are eating multiple meals away from their parents. And so you want to talk to them about, how do they make decisions about portion control? How open are they to maybe trying new things? How do they ask for food if they're hungry and maybe are not so interested in what's being served at that particular meal? It's really wonderful to see the skills that they gain and to see the breadth of things that they might be willing to try. A lot of times kids will come home and share that they've tried some new foods and want to try them at home, which is wonderful. But it is a good thing to prepare for. Again, stamina. The environment of camp is go, go, go throughout the day. There are often built-in periods for rest or quiet time, but it is a long day filled with activity. And especially after some of our kids may have been a little more sedentary over the last few years and spending more time at home, it's important that you sort of build up that endurance and that stamina. Another thing to consider is the amount of alone time that your child requires, because while at home, maybe they have their own room, they can sort of excuse themselves and decompress in that space. They may not have that space or that time to be alone, because the wonderful part about camp is it's such a wonderful and engaging community. And so it's likely they're going to be around peers and staff a lot of the time. They should definitely know how to ask for breaks, but the breaks might look a little bit different than what they do at home when they have a little more time and space to themselves. Another thing is just in general doing things independently. And while there are certainly staff there to prompt them to do things like use that last 5 minutes to get out the door on time or to move from place to place with supervision, being able to manage some of those things on their own and not have to constantly be guided towards what the next thing is important. Because you want them to be able to have a sense of pride and independence and be able to be engaged in the activities and program. Another thing that I also can't emphasize enough is being able to advocate for themselves, because your kids, you know them well. You can notice when they have a need that maybe they're not expressing to you directly. You might ask some questions to get at what they're thinking about or what their need is. Your staff are trying very hard to get to know them, but what works best is when the kids can ask for what they need and advocate if there's a concern or something is wrong. So it's important that you talk to them about the confidence you have in them to speak up if there's something that they need. And similarly, that last point about connecting with adults, that's really, again, about making sure they can ask for help and get what they need. So these are just a few things that we found to be helpful in assessing readiness. And I'll turn it back to Tracy.
Thanks so much, Lisa. And yes, absolutely. It's never too early and never too late to have a camp experience. So once they're ready, or you're starting to think about camp, it's often a multi-year planning process. I'm going to go through what I have found to be the 5 key steps to finding a great camp for your child. If you're planning for 2023, this is definitely the time to plan. A lot of camps are starting to get pretty filled up. And it's also a great time to start planning for 2024, planning tours, et cetera, for this summer. And the big thing to keep in mind is you're not just looking for a great camp, but you're looking for a great camp for your child. So step 1, think about the primary objectives that you are hoping to achieve. Is it more about meeting friends? Is it about trying new activities, building independence? It's likely a combination of these things. Are you looking for somewhere there may be some familiar faces around, or perhaps a place where kids don't know anybody at camp? I am definitely a big proponent for not going to camp with a lot of friends or with a close friend. That can actually be very challenging and be more of a detriment than a benefit, because it's just a great place to explore different aspects of yourself. Kids want to branch out, meet new people. Think about if your child does better in a larger or smaller environment, a program where there's a more set schedule and the bunk moves together, or a program where there's more choice and more electives. Keep in mind, there's a really wide array of camps. In the Foundation for Jewish Camp Network, there's over 150 different camps, traditional and many newer specialty camps as well. For many camps, a traditional season is 7 to 8 weeks, with about 3 to 4 weeks, 2 sessions of 3 to 4 weeks each, sometimes with some short stay or intro type programs for the youngest campers. Which, by the way, is something else to consider. That could be a great way to try out camp, but for kids who take a little longer to get settled in a new situation, sometimes a short stay could actually be a bit of a challenge, because they might just about be getting settled in to camp when it's time to go home. As I was mentioning, there's a nice array of specialty camps: sports, arts, STEM, farming, so many areas. Many of those camps by design have 2-week sessions. So those are by design a little bit shorter. And as I said, there's a lot of ways to check out camps: tours, rookie days, short stays. And definitely don't choose a camp just because a friend is going there. So there's certainly, it's a good way to get some ideas, which brings me to step 2. Do your research. A great first step is being here. And there's a lot of ways to get in-depth knowledge about camp during the winter. Watch videos, take a virtual tour. There's lots of virtual open houses that camps are hosting. Do a Zoom or a call with the director. The directors, Lisa and Carrie and their colleagues, are available to you all year long. And it's really important to meet the directors. You're entrusting camp with your child, and you want to get a sense of what their philosophy is and ensure that you're in sync on the important things. If you're on social media, follow camp on social media. It's a great way to start to get a sense of the personality of camp and who's part of the community, and does it feel like it's your people. And if you do in the winter, which is likely, choose a camp without actually visiting, because winter's not really the peak time to visit camp, you can still then plan a visit in the spring so that your kids and you are getting to see camp before it's actually time to go to camp. Engage your child in the process. I think you'll hear a lot today and tonight that you know your child best, so this will be different for each parent and each family. But I do find that when kids are engaged in the process of selecting a camp, they're more bought into making it successful. So you might want to pre-screen a bunch of camps and then decide with your child on 2 or 3 camps you want to delve into and learn more about. If you're on a tour, you're on a call with a director, I really recommend to take a step back and let the director and the camp folks engage your child. Kids have very different questions in their minds than we do, and letting them and encouraging them to ask those questions may also allay some of their fears. Utilize trusted resources. Myself and Jerry, if you live in the greater Metro West New Jersey community, are here to give free guidance on camps, and many other federations have a similar role. Renee at the American Camp Association is the director of camp replacement, is a wonderful resource for families. We are funded through the community. There's never any kind of fee or commission to families or camps. We are here simply to help families find the best camp. Most importantly, trust your gut feeling. If something doesn't feel right or something feels right and feels like your camp, then it probably is. That said, evolve as you go through the process with your camp search. And even after the decision is made, I will say my own kids ended up at 2 different camps. And the first camp my son went to, he liked it, he didn't love it. And I really believe kids should really love camp. And we learned from that to find an even better fit for him in the future. So evolve as it goes along. I'm now going to turn it over to Carrie, who's going to talk a bit about tips for kids and parents to help set up their campers for success.
Great. Thank you so much, Tracy, for having me. Appreciate being on this fine panel with lots of great colleagues. So I think first and foremost, thank you for entrusting your children with us now that you've made the decision to send them. And we need to remember that this is a partnership. This is a partnership between the camp and between the family. And the more information you can share with us, the better. I think we also need to be very clear about expectation setting. What does camp look like? What you're allowed to do? What a day may look like? I like to use the example about bedtime. And at home, many families have lots of rituals about bedtime. And while the rituals will not be the same at camp, they are certainly going to have bedtime rituals at camp as well with a counselor. It may be a bunk closure activity where they're talking about their favorite part of the day, or the counselor may end up reading a chapter of a book to the bunk every single night before bedtime. So while that bedtime ritual is different, it will be a ritual that will establish them to make them feel comfortable. And as much as camp becomes home, and it's their home away from home. And so they'll be far more comfortable in the bunk setting. It's really important that we validate all of their feelings, right? These kids are going to feel overwhelmed and anxious and excited and nervous. And all of those feelings are appropriate and all of those feelings are real. And so we need to validate them and express to them that it may be hard and you'll have good days and you'll have bad days, but we want you to come out of your comfort zone. We want you to experience different aspects of camp. We want you to make those friends and take some risks. I'm not going to be standing by your side. I think Lisa alluded to trying new foods for the first time. So we want them to try new foods, and it is about taking risks, but validating how it could be scary, and they understand that. But expectation setting is really, really, really key. Don't create empty promises or make empty promises and say, I'll come get you if you're not having a good time. That's really not a great way to set your child up for success. So you want to set reasonable expectations. And most camps don't have phone policies. So be upfront and honest about that from the beginning, so they understand that writing a letter home is great, or maybe perhaps emailing home, but we're not going to have a conversation because you need to acclimate to your new beautiful camp experience. And then again, I want to also just say that camp is a long day and they are tired. We like to run them ragged so that they're exhausted. And it is sometimes they become overwhelmed by the overstimulation of camp, perhaps. And so they may need to advocate for themselves that they need a little bit of downtime, and that's okay. That self-advocating is really key to express to us that, what, it's been a really long day, I'm exhausted, and I actually just want to go to sleep early tonight. There is nothing wrong with that, and we appreciate that they're going to be upfront and honest. So really expectation setting, validating feelings, and the fact that this is a partnership between parents and campers, I think are the 3 key takeaways from sending your child to camp. Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks so much, Carrie. Lisa, some thoughts from you on helping kids get ready for their first summer at camp?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought Carrie had some wonderful suggestions. So I echo all of what she said. A few other things that come to mind for me, some, very practical. One is talking to your child with confidence. And I think Renee talked about this also, that they very much pick up on your tone. And so, you know, it's a big deal that you have the confidence in them, and projecting that, I think, is really important, while also obviously setting realistic expectations about challenge, because challenge will happen at camp. But when you believe in them and remind them of that, hopefully it will instill confidence when they face those challenges. I think one thing also to talk with your child openly about is privacy, because the environment of camp is quite different than the living environment at home. And so thinking about how many people will be around them, what their comfort level is, what they expect it will be like, and ask a lot of questions of the camp also, so that you can prepare together for what that will feel like. Carrie talked about not setting the expectation about calling home, and that's because most or many camps have technology policies so that children are don't have access to, on a regular basis, their phones and technology like computers. And so that's a big transition. And I think actually preparing your child for that is really important. It's wonderful because they really do very quickly build some new communication skills, but it's quite different from the way that they communicate at home. And so you want them to really be prepared for that. What we've seen on our end is that it's a pretty quick transition, but best to really be clear about that. Another thing that I think is helpful on a practical level is actually working with your child when you're packing, so they know what they have and they know where it is and they are ready to access it when they need it, because a lot of time and effort goes into the physical preparations for camp, and it's good for them to know what they have so that they're not searching for it when they get there. Another very practical piece is about writing letters, because it's a skill that not many of our kids actually have experience with before they get to camp. In our camp, we actually have a sample letter hanging up in every cabin, so they see this is where you put the stamp and this is where you put the address, because many of them don't even know that. So talk to them about, this is a way to get in touch with us, how wonderful that we have this. And what are your expectations about how frequently you will hear from them, so that they are thinking about that and communicating, hopefully frequently, about their experiences. Another thing to think about is yourself as a parent and how to set yourself up for success, because you have to think about, what is this going to feel like to be away from each other? What am I going to do to occupy my time? Some people, it's a really nice respite. Other people struggle maybe more than they expect. And so thinking about yourself and how to prepare is really important. And in those moments when it might be hard to be away from them, I would just encourage you to remember why you're doing this, because it's such a wonderful opportunity for them to grow, to build skills, to build resilience. And again, it's a real gift.
These are really great suggestions. And by the way, I'm loving those camp backgrounds. It's really making me want to be at camp. So welcome Jerry Russo, who is my partner at One Happy Camper in New Jersey. Jerry's going to talk a little bit about financial resources for camp, and then we're going to open it up to some Q&A. So this would be a good time if anyone has any, I know we received a question or two. If anyone has any additional questions, pop them in the chat or the Q&A.
Hi, everyone. As Tracy mentioned, I'm Jerry Russo, and we work together, Tracy and I. First, I just give you some general suggestions about ways to possibly save money when your child is going to camp. Applying early, which is actually too late for this year, but for next year. Applying early, some camps have early bird rates, and there's always sibling discounts that goes throughout the year. So those are two ways to be able to save money. One really wonderful thing is a lot of parents like to work at camp, and that is a really important, nice to have, nice for your child, and also nice to be able to save money. If cost is a hurdle, it's important to talk to camp and be open with them and see if there's a way that they can help you. We also, in Greater Metro West New Jersey, have many different grants. We have a One Happy Camper grant for first-time campers. If you're not from Greater Metro West, check with your local community, but we have up to $1,000 off for any first-time camper who is going to camp for the first time. And we also have scholarships that I run. If you can reach out to me, we'll put my name and contact information in the group chat. For scholarships for camps, we also have, so those are need-based ones. And we also have a Russian-speaking Jewish family camp grant that is $500 for Russian-speaking Jewish families. So again, for those of you in the greater Metro West area, Tracy and myself are your local contact. And if you are not in greater Metro West, you can check on with your local federation to find out who your camp contact is. And we'll put our contact information in the group chat. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jerry. Okay, wow, that was a lot of information. And as we've said, Renee, camp directors, lots of resources are available to help you with this process. So one question that we received is, if my child is not going to know anybody at camp, how can I help prepare them in meeting others or otherwise get ready to go? Let's see. Carrie or Lisa, does one of you want to start from a camp director perspective on that?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. I think that it is natural for parents to want to set their child up to connect with someone before the summer so they might have a familiar face. And I just would share a few thoughts. One is, our job is to make sure that whenever any child arrives at camp, that they are wholeheartedly welcomed into the community. So especially new campers, there's a lot of training and supports in place so that as they arrive, we really make sure that they feel safe and included from the beginning moments that they're there. And even for returning campers, a lot has changed over the years. So we expect that it's a completely different dynamic. And so there's a lot of team building and get to know you activities. So trust that when they arrive, many other kids may not know anyone. And even if yours is one of the few that are new, we do a lot to make sure they feel welcomed. Thinking ahead, or thinking a little bit backwards about before they get to camp, I would say when it comes to meeting other campers so they have a familiar face, to just proceed with caution, because again, while the inclination is good, I shared that it may not be necessary. And also there's a risk that if you meet another camper and for whatever reason, it doesn't feel like a great social fit for your child, that may actually make them more concerned about the experience that they're going to have at camp. There will be so many kids that they meet once they get to camp, and they will hopefully really find people that they deeply connect with. But if that one child they meet before the summer is not someone that they feel that connection to, it might actually make the preparation for camp a little bit more challenging.
That's such a good perspective. I always learn things when we do these chats together. Renee or Carrie, any other thoughts on that?
This is when you would want to partner with a camp director, and if you're really honest with the camp director about who your child is and what concerns they may be having, and the camp director has now hopefully met this child, whether it's by Zoom or you've had a home visit, they may be able to suggest, there is actually a child in the bunk who I think your child would really have a great meeting with. That may be one thing, but I totally agree with Lisa to just put your child into a social situation with somebody they don't know. That's a lot of pressure to put on two kids, and it can backfire. I think you have to trust in the camp and their leadership to guide you in what's best here.
Thank you so much. Other question is, my child has an allergy and is a very picky eater. How can I make sure they are eating enough at camp? Carrie, want to talk to that? Kick us off on that one?
Sure. So I think most camps have, personnel who are specialized in this area. I know in our camp, it's called a specialty food liaison, and they are literally hired to deal with kids with allergies and also very picky eaters. There's a plethora of food available at camp, and 9 times out of 10, we can find something. But I also think that when your parents are not around and there's a bunk of 10 to 15 campers sitting at a table, they are inclined to maybe try some new things for the first time. I know I spoke to a parent yesterday and she said, I wasn't expecting them to come home eating all these new foods, but that was an added bonus of camp that I hadn't planned for. So it is true that peer pressure does a world of good in the camp setting with food, and they hopefully will come out of their comfort zone and try new foods. But there are specialty food liaisons, again, that's what we call them, in most camps, to encourage healthy eating, to find alternatives, and to ensure that all allergy needs are being met. Again, we also have a board that hangs in the dining hall with a check off, and I think a lot of camps do that, so that if there's egg in the meal, your child immediately knows, oh, there's egg in the meal, I better make sure I can still have this for breakfast or lunch. I think also that it can be challenging to navigate the dining hall, right? The salad bars are kind of high up, and we have to remember the counselors will help them get the bowls down and fill their bowls with cereal. They'll help take the trays. We do cafeteria style. So the counselors will definitely assist with cutting their food and helping them make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. We are not peanut free. I know, shocking, but we're not. And I remember as a parent, my own son came home that first summer. He was 8 years old, went for the first time, actually 7 probably. He came making his own peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I was so excited to see that I no longer had to do that for him. So all of these independent skills will happen organically at camp.
That's great. And yes, I think Jerry and I see across camps, there are a lot of accommodations for allergies, and for special dietary requirements, vegetarian meals, gluten-free, etc. So it is nice that it seems like the options have really increased. And as you said, though, I love that it is a bonus that parents may be surprised with what their kids come home eating. Okay, so we are going to end off with a video, I think a great video about the perspective of parents and kids and camp. Thank you so much to everybody who joined us, and especially to my colleagues that joined us. Please, we will email some follow-up information, and please feel free to reach out to us if we could be of help. Okay.
My kids to camp because I think that the experience of being away is such a growing opportunity. Your child will really be able to gain independence, a sense of maturity.
You know, there's no way to explain when you see your kids smile when you pick them up and you're like, what do you think about next year? And they're like, yes.
They become really independent and strong, and they just learn things in a different way than maybe they would have learned at home.
Being in a Jewish environment surrounded by Jewish kids was the first reason that we started, but then it just became a part of their identity. Just seeing the staff put their arms around the campers, I mean, it's just like blows your mind. It blows your mind. It's amazing.
Your kids come home and they're able to do things on their own without any assistance.
So when you get that letter from them and it's like 2 sentences, hi mom and dad, I'm having a great time, bye. You know, like that's what you're looking for, right? And you just want them to be happy, and like that's kind of the endorsement that you want to get, and they give it to you right away.
Our children are very happy with their experiences here, and yours will too.
We'll see you guys later.
Bye.
See you next year.
Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us.